Terminators are Death Guard's only bodyguard option, yet they are also one of their best melee units. So one question that lots of people ask is, how should you use these Deathshroud Terminators? And I'm Andrew from ATC Studio, and welcome to Deathshroud Terminators Tactics. So, the great thing about Deathshroud Terminators is because, of course, they can deep strike, is you can put them in your list, a squad of 3. Then if the opponent has snipers, then you can leave them back to protect your other characters. And of course, also, I'll talk about how you best do that later on in the video. But of course, you could otherwise deep strike them, in which case they can be a real threat because the opponent needs to have something at the back to watch out for them. And also, they might be able to do a charge. They can also do a bit of damage with their placement gauntlets, of course, with a plus 6-inch range stratagem. So they can be quite good. So if you're going to deep strike them, you've got to remember what your enemy is, and because of course against Primaris Marines they're going to be doing really well. They're strength 8, AP 3. D3 damage isn't too nice, but you're still going to be picking up quite a lot of Primaris Marines, and 2/3 of the time you will be getting a straight kill from each shot. And of course, when you even though it's gone up a lot since the last edition, when you're charging with 3 of these, still under 140 points, and out of that you are still getting 13 attacks at 8 minus 3d3. I've also seen these work charging tanks. I've literally seen them one-shot predators. They are really good, so I would probably put them in deep strike. However, again, it depends what the army you're playing is. If you're playing a more mobile army that's going to be coming at you more, maybe like, let's say, Drukhari, then you might want to keep them with your whole army and advance them forward. Of course, you may be able to give the characters around them +1 attack with the Eyes of Mortarion ability, which is of course really nice, because what that means is you can deep strike them with like a Malignant Playcaster or Lord of Contagion, and they can be a really good, they can work together really well, and you can quite easily take out a large amount of their back line. Now, of course, although attempting a 90-inch charge is quite a nice idea, you are realistically going to end up having to charge turn 2. That's not too much of a problem, because realistically, they're not going to want to commit so much attacks to the Deathshroud, and they are really resilient. Of course, you've got T5, 2-up save, 4-up invuln. If of course you do have that Malignant Playcaster nearby, you might want to put on Miasma of Pestilence or Progression Vitality, because of course plus 1 strength and toughness would mean they're strength 9 in melee. Though that doesn't mean much. That means if you're going up against a heavy tank, they'll be winning on 3s as opposed to 4, which is of course quite nice, especially when they're re-rolling 1s, so they're actually failing a much smaller amount than if they're winning on 4s, which of course is really good. And of course, if you are playing, as I said, someone like Drukhari, you want to target probably the heavier units. There's no point targeting hordes with these. You're just going to be wasting that D3 damage. I would think maybe try also not to target one wound things. Like, I would more likely target the Terminators, the characters, also the light transports, rhinos, reavers, and pulsers. You get the gist. Of course, afterwards all Marines will be 2 wounds, which will mean that these will be a lot more effective, because they'll be able to do good amounts of damage against all Marines and wound on 2 for pretty much all of them, which is really, really nice. So make sure that you're using these a lot against Marines, because that's when they're working out really well. And the Placement Gauntlets don't do too much damage, but don't be afraid to, if you've got lots of CP, to spend the CP to get them that plus range if that's it means that after deep striking, they can shoot it at a squad of Marines or something. They might kill 1 or 2. It's always worth it, particularly if it's lighter infantry like Guardsmen or Cultists, then it's definitely worth it. And if it is against Guard, you want to, of course, be targeting those Leman Russes, targeting the tanks. And this isn't just to hold them up, because of course you can't do that anymore, but this is basically to kill the tanks, and also quite easily get them down to a lower level, which is of course really nice. Remember about Death of the False Emperor, so 13 attacks plus Death of the False Emperor, that's really nice, gives you a few more. Of course you've got that, neither of these make much difference. Remember about Hate for the Source, of course. You can Disgusting Resilient really helps make them resilient. You could of course always put Chest Vitality or Cloud of Flies if they're going behind, so they can't be shot at, but they are still very resilient, and they are actually really useful, as although they are only 2 wounds, it's really hard for them to triple out those 2 wounds, and then you can always spend 2 CP to put them back on 1 wounds, which if your next one's on 4 wounds, which will really annoy the enemy. Now back to the character Bodyguard character protection. Now here's the thing with the character protection. So you, as Death Guard, you are quite vulnerable, particularly with Malignant Playcasters, Foul Blightspawns, Noxious Blightbringers, and Tallyman, all of which you're probably going to have quite a few of in your list, and they're quite easily, if the opponent's got a squad of Eliminators, they've got a Vindicare, they're quite easily going to be taking down one every turn. So the great thing about Deathshroud is you can put a squad of 3 or 6, Cloud of Flies, so the only things that can really shoot at them are the snipers via the characters, and then you have all the characters in a bit of a bubbling around them. Of course, if you're going to do this tactic with Foul Blightspawn, it's quite difficult to do it with multiple Foul Blightspawn. So of course, if you look in my Foul Blightspawn tactics video, which will be in the top right corner right now, have a click on it once you finish watching this one. That is a very good one. Now, of course, with the Foul Blightspawn, you've got 2 ways of doing it, because you're going to need these when the opponent charges. You fight first, so you're going to have the Foul Blightspawn in them, but only 4 wounds, no invulnerable. They're quite easy to die to some snipers. So I would put, if you've only got a Deathshroud and they've got lots of snipers, if you think they're going to have lots of snipers, I will probably have just the 1 Foul Blightspawn with the Fugras's helm to make it 10 inches, which really helps, and maybe also Arch Contaminator or something. Although, of course, you don't really know pre-game whether they're going to have many snipers or not, so I still take multiple Foul Blightspawn. And if you do have multiple Foul Blightspawn, make sure that at least 1 or 2 of them are covered by the Deathshroud. Same with those Tallyman Noxious Blightbringer. You will bring them for 1 ability, so make sure they're undercover. And of course also the Malignant Playcasters, all their psychic powers are 18 inches, so don't really worry about them getting out of range, and put them around the Deathshroud Terminators. And the problem is you are paying a lot of points for Deathshroud Terminators, which will only take in a few turns of sniper fire. However, particularly with the Foul Blightspawn, it is worth keeping those characters alive until the end. And of course, if you've got some good firepower, you may be able to eliminate the snipers, and you may have only lost 1 Deathshroud by the time you've eliminated the snipers, and then you may be able to spend 2 CP to get the other one back, and then you may be able to attack them with a full flanked Deathshroud squad, so then you can also have protected, but now also be doing damage, which is of course really good. And yeah, of course, when you're in combat, always look out that try and get a character within 3 inches to get the +1 attack. However, of course, if you've got Mortarion as in your army, then try and get these Deathshroud to protect them. Even put them Cloud that Flies, put them near them just like T1 or T2, because even though they're going to die quickly, getting Mortarion into combat is something really important. And of course, because you're going to have a squad of most likely 2 wound Foul Blightspawns, then it's sort of, they can't really use any heavy fire against it. They have to use a medium fire, which most armies don't have too much of, and even then it's quite hard them to kill the Deathshroud, mean that Mortarion can usually, with the Deathshroud, take up a couple of turns and hopefully do okay. If you are going first, make sure to deploy the Deathshroud just in front of Mortarion, because Mortarion's going to be moving 12 inches, Deathshroud's only 4 plus a half advance, and you want the Deathshroud to be within 3 inches of Mortarion, so make sure that the Deathshroud are as far forward as possible if you are using this as your role. However, of course, if you're facing a fast army, then you might want to put them behind. Of course, if you're going second, you need to watch out for the fire that might be incoming. So maybe at the first go, if you know you're going second, try and put them in cover or something, and be careful about the fire before you're able to spend Cloud of Flies. Of course, you can put these in a squad of 6, but I would personally recommend putting them in a squad of 3. Gives you quite a bit more flexibility, and if you do want 6, there's no harm putting them in 2 separate squads. Just gives you more flexibility, and of course you also get an extra champion, which not only gets the extra attack and leadership, but also gets an extra plague burst gauntlet, which is really nice. So if you do want 6, just field them as 2 separate squads. So that's it for today's video. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment your opinions down below. But for now, bye.